Hey, how are you doing? In May this year, there was a court judgment which was very important for those who used the Japan Student Service Organization to pay for tuition fees of a university or college. And the content of a court judgment was that the Japan Student Service Organization needed to refund the overpayments that they had received from guarantors of tuition loans. And uh, moreover, judges recognized the fact that the Japan Student Service Organization kept asking for payment, although they had already known that these payments shouldn't have been received originally. So, in the first place, the Japan Student Service Organization was the incorporated administrative agency managed by the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare. And in Japan, scholarship for high school, university, college, and vocational school that we indicate here in Japan in most cases is from the scholarship program provided by this organization. So it is really unthinkable that a public organization established in the name of student support kept asking guarantors for illegal payments that shouldn't have been received, in spite of knowing that their act had no legitimacy. So first of all, I want to make sure the details of this judgment. So plaintiffs who filed a lawsuit against the Japan Student Service Organization this time was 76-year-old man and 69-year-old woman living in Hokkaido in Japan. So one important point is that both of them were not debtors, but both of them were just guarantors of a person who had took out tuition fees to go to tuition loans to go to a university. And in the first place, scholarship that people recognize in Japan is not something paid for those who face financial hardship to assist them to go to a certain educational institution with no obligation to return it back. Rather, scholarship here in Japan is recognized as tuition loan with obligation to make repayments with a certain amount of interest until the deadline. And when people want to take out a tuition loan from the student service organization, they need to choose preparing guarantors personally or using an insurance company that guarantees debtors repayment when they fall into insolvency in the first place. So in case that a tuition debtor prepare guarantors, they principally need to prepare two guarantors. They need to prepare a joint guarantor and normal guarantor. And they persuade father and mother to become a joint guarantor and persuade one of their kinship relatives to become a normal guarantor. And if a debtor who borrows a tuition loans from the Japan Student Service Organization falls into insolvency, those guarantors have to make repayment for the tuition debt. So, but the scope of responsibility for guarantors' repayment obligation is legally limited compared to that of debtor. So, basically, a joint guarantor is seen as a liability holder, same as a debtor, tuition debtor in Japan. So that is like no matter whether a debtor has money or not, a lender is legally entitled to ask a joint guarantor for repayment from the beginning. But a normal guarantor is different from a joint guarantor. A normal guarantor is legally entitled to say a lender, like, please ask a joint guarantor for repayment first. A normal guarantor has repayment obligation only after both a debtor and joint guarantor fall into insolvency. And according to the civil law in Japan, Civil Act in Japan, if there are multiple guarantors for one debtor, repayment amount is divided into the number of guarantors. In case of tuition loan provided by the Japan Student Service Organization, the number of guarantors is 2. Guarantor, a normal guarantor and a joint guarantor, so that the amount of repayments for each guarantor should be split in halves between a joint guarantor and a normal guarantor. However, a 76-year-old man was, as a joint guarantor, paid back 650,000 yen. That are 70% of 940,000 yen. That was the rest of their debt that a debtor wasn't able to pay back halfway because of insolvency. And 69-year-old woman, as a normal guarantor, paid off 2,420,000 yen completely, claimed by the Japan Student Service Organization. That was the total tuition debt amount that a debtor originally borrowed from there. So the fact that the Japan Student Service Organization claimed the rest of not repaid debt to a normal grantor due to insolvency of a debtor and a joint grantor was legitimate. But the problem in this case is that the Japan Student Service Organization don't claim the rest of tuition debt that a debtor wasn't able to pay back halfway because of insolvency, but it claimed the total tuition amount, total tuition debt amount that a debtor had initially borrowed from the Japan Student Service Organization to a normal guarantor, right? So both of them thought it was really strange for them to make a repayment of total tuition debt amount that debtor initially borrowed from the Japan Student Service Organization. So and they filed a lawsuit against the Japan Student Service Organization to reclaim overpayment. The Japan Student Service Organization insisted the guarantors should have understood the repayment amount beforehand, and they should have declared the repayment amount to the Japan Student Service Organization beforehand. So they insisted that it was no problem to claim them to repay back total debt. Which means in short, the Japan Student Service Organization wanted to say, like, it's your fault if you get fooled around. So it's your fault if you don't realize it, right? So judges concluded this trial by accepting plaintiff's complaint in the form that they ordered the Japan Student Service Organization to pay back plaintiffs' overpayment and compensation. And such heinous debt claim from the Japan Student Service Organization has been problematized since before in Japan. This problem has afflicted Japanese students with poor solvency going to a high school educational institutions for a long time. So not so many students of a college or university drop out because of this problem in Japan. So in Japan, there is a big problem in the financial support system for students going to a college or university. The government and any educational institutions in Japan have no stance to make an investment to students with hidden potential that will wake up in the future and contribute to the Japanese economy in the form that they assist students by reducing the financial burden of very expensive tuition fees to go to a university or college. So, as I told you in the beginning, scholarship in Japan is not non-refundable scholarship. It's not non-refundable scholarship, but tuition loan, student loan in most cases in Japan. So the Japan Student Service Organization persistently leave frequent reminders of a repayment to students who fall behind in repayment. So according to OECD, when we see comparison of Japan's public investment to advanced education with that of other OECD member countries from proportion of GDP, Japan's expenditure towards advanced education stagnates around 1.3%, which falls below 1.4% at the average education expenditure of OECD member countries. Right? So, moreover, 0.9% out of 1.4% of educational expenditure in Japan is based on private expenditure coming from each individual general household. In short, educational expenditure is mostly supported by not fiscal budget from the government and municipalities, but individual private household budget. In this way, the percentage that the government allocates the fiscal budget to educational expenditure is extremely low compared to that of other OECD member countries in Japan. So there is the picture that parents of students are normally forced to make a financial support for tuition fees of enrollment of a college or university in Japan. So for that reason, so many students who can't rely on financial support from their parents can't help taking out tuition loans from the Japan Student Service Organization to go to university or college. And currently, 1 in 3 students, which are like 34% of entire students in Japan, is using tuition loans from the Japan Student Service Organization in Japan. So moreover, this percentage is 1.5 times more than the percentage in 2004. So to make matters worse, whether they can earn money enough to pay back tuition loans, tuition debt, is one important judgment material to choose a job after graduation. Right? So tuition loan costing them a couple millions yen is the biggest debt for students in their life to pay back if they don't take out home loans. So 4% of working population in Japan gets crowded out to unstable temporary job in Japan. And even if students graduate from universities, a salary hasn't increased in Japan for a long time. So in this situation, it is quite easy to figure out the situation where the number of people who go to an advanced educational institution will reduce dramatically.